Well, good morning, and welcome to our second virtual breakfast here, and at least our weather outlook. And it's well, I think Kurt said it fairly well. We've been looking outside for obvious reasons, and the long and the short of it is that we're going to be doing that for a few more days. And I'll talk about that in just a second. I'm going to start here though with an overview of where we've been. For all of the state and for actually all of the region, it was a cooler than normal week. That shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Mean temperatures across the state generally over the last week running from about 2 to as many as 5 degrees below normal. So cool start to April. And for most of the state, not all, but most of the state, it was also wetter than normal. On the right-hand side here are our precipitation totals through yesterday morning. And they range from actually some below normal totals in the far southeastern part of the state, down Monroe County in the Detroit area here, to more than 2 inches. The yellow coloring here that you see is more 2 inches or greater. And you can see a fairly large area of west central and southwestern lower up into northern portions of the lower peninsula. Got more than 2 inches of rain. That's at least 150% of normal. And again, continues a wetter than normal trend for much of the state here over the last few weeks. In terms of soil moisture and where we are, of course, obviously not a lot of opportunities. There one exception, somewhat of an exception, that would be up in the portions of upper Michigan, the south central part of the lower peninsula. On the left-hand side here, we're looking at soil moisture in the top 3 feet of the profile expressed as a percentile historically. And so the yellows and browns are areas where we have below normal soil moisture at this point in time. And the greens and blues are the opposite, where we have excess. And what we've seen in Michigan here, especially over the last several weeks, is we've seen a greening of the map here with time. And in Michigan, you can see there are portions of, especially of the southern half of lower Michigan that are dark green, indicating above normal soil moisture totals. But as you move north and west from that up into, portions of south central upper Michigan, you can see some browns where conditions still are a little drier than normal or is typical over the long haul. And on the right-hand side here is our latest U.S. Drought Monitor. We typically don't watch this as much as we do later on in the season, but I think it is interesting that we have seen with the wetter than normal pattern over the last few weeks, we've seen a lot of the state leave abnormally dry, or what was classified by the Drought Monitor as abnormally dry. For example, this is the map depiction of as of late, or the end of March. In 1 week, we went from 53% of the state classified as abnormally dry or worse. There's a little bit of D1 moderate drought in northwestern lower and up into upper Michigan, but we went down to 22% for this particular. So a large drop off or decrease, and there will be more of a drop off here this week given the precipitation that we had yesterday. I would note too, and I didn't mention this, but the rainfall totals you saw yesterday for most of the state did not include the significant rainfall we saw. A lot of areas picked up 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch in yesterday's event. So again, wetter than normal has been the rule. One other thing too of note, and the dryness you can see in some parts of Michigan here is associated with an area across portions of the upper Midwest, all of Wisconsin, portions of Minnesota. This goes back to dryness last year, actually is an extension of that, plus a little bit of drier than normal conditions over the winter. But that is expected to gradually decrease or dissipate with time, with more in the way of precipitation expected. And I'll get into that in just a moment. One other thing too, you can see lots and lots of colors here on the Drought Monitor and on the soil moisture map on the left. There are areas of the country, of course, in the western U.S. that are experiencing historic drought conditions. We've heard a lot about that, but I would specifically bring your attention here to portions of the plains. This is an area to watch. Some of our winter wheat crop down in the southern and central Great Plains is definitely at risk here with long-term dryness, and you can see lots of drought conditions, especially across western production areas in the high plains from northern Texas and Oklahoma on up into Kansas and Nebraska. And that's an area to watch because those crops have come out of dormancy, are growing. They are going to need water very, very soon. They of course run a little bit of an advanced phenological schedule relative to us here in Michigan, and they will need water soon. And the outlook right now is not overly optimistic about precipitation. And so given, and Kurt mentioned this, given all of the unusual circumstances internationally, especially in Europe, Ukraine, Russia, two big, obviously, producers with all sorts of problems, and the volatile prices with the wheat market. This is one to watch here closer to home because it is a significant production area, and they are lacking water, and it's just something to keep an eye on here over the next few weeks. Well, moving on to the forecast here, lots of info here on this particular slide. We have a big area of wound up low pressure here up over northern Wisconsin. That's the system that brought us the precipitation yesterday. Down in the lower left is a recent radar pic. The rainfall or the precipitation that affected much of Michigan yesterday has now moved eastward and on over into the mid-Atlantic. You can see it here in Pennsylvania and New York. But one of the things that just a little meteorology here to look at, you can see very, very well that this particular low pressure feature is so-called, it's vertically stacked in the atmosphere. And they basically upper air feature here down in the lower hand right. This is the jet stream. You can see this cutoff troughing feature here, and the surface feature is right underneath it. That's not very typical that we see that. Usually they're offset a little bit, the surface feature versus the upper air feature. They're definitely linked together. We have to have one to have the other, but this case they're called stacked. And so this particular system is in the process of weakening, even though it's still fairly there's a lot of wind around this, but it's actually filling in the low pressure. But you can also see here, there's an awful lot of still precipitation wrapped around, especially to the western side of this. And you can see the center of the circulation here actually on the radar. That's going to slowly, when these systems are vertically stacked, they typically move only very, very slowly with time versus normal circumstances. This one is going to drift to the south and east, and it's going to take a long time, the next couple days, and basically lead to an extended chance for showers. Some of it will be liquid, some of it will still be frozen. There's enough cold air wrapped around this. So we will see scattered rain showers continuing today, tonight, tomorrow, and actually unfortunately, even into Saturday morning. I think we were hoping that maybe we would be dry by Saturday, but it looks like this system will linger on. You'll see that in the forecast here in just a moment. So look for scattered showers, rain in the south, where rain and snow mix, and probably more snow as you move northward into the northern lower and especially into upper Michigan. We will see tonight or later on today and tonight, there's enough moisture there, probably some accumulation still in upper Michigan or portions of upper Michigan. Not a huge event, but still enough, a couple of inches here or there to remind us that it's still maybe more late winter than early spring. Like tomorrow morning, a little bit of weakening with the system, but again, it hasn't moved all that far down to south central lower. Basically a rinse and repeat type of situation, and I will call it cloudy, breezy, unsettled with showers, especially during the afternoon and evening hours. If you've got tickets for opening day in Tiger Stadium tomorrow afternoon, bring a couple layers, I guess, would probably be the best advice here. Looking probably temperatures in the 40s with some of those, again, a threat of showers, maybe a few snowflakes mixed in. So not for the Great Lakes, for our part of the world, I guess not an unusual opening day, but it won't be an ideal one, I guess is probably the lesson. And then finally, by Saturday morning here, we do see finally the system beginning to move out, but there will be some lingering showers, especially across eastern portions of the state during the day on Saturday. On Sunday, conditions improve, and we will see dry and milder conditions, temperatures up several degrees from where they are over the next couple of days. By the way, high temperatures only in the 30s and 40s over the next couple of days, lows generally in the 30s, but we will see some hard freeze conditions up in the upper peninsula, but cooler than normal definitely for the next few days, moderating by Sunday. And then we start a big upper air pattern change. And one of the things over the last several weeks that's important is we've had a very, very progressive jet stream pattern, west to east systems, one after another, across North America. That is expected to continue. So we will see the next change about every 5 to 7 days. We've seen a fairly large change in weather. And I think that we can expect that pattern probably to continue for most of the rest of April. The next change comes again late in the weekend, and early next week we'll be under southwesterly flow for a change of pace. and it will lead to a significant increase in temperatures for at least the first half of next week, probably looking at widespread 60s. A few spots in the far south may touch 70 degrees, so much warmer early next week than it has been. But there will also be, unfortunately, with this pattern, the Gulf of Mexico will be wide open. We will see a continuing threat, probably even a greater threat for precipitation. So while we're looking at generally light precipitation totals here over the next couple of days, a tenth of an inch where precipitation occurs, maybe a quarter of an inch by the time we get to the weekend, more significant rainfall is possible. I would even say probably likely by next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, probably looking at at least another quarter to half an inch at that point in time. And so what's in the gauge here over the next week in total, you can see again, lots of darker blues, lots of precipitation here. Most areas at least 3/4 of an inch, some cases again, more than an inch. So more delays, more challenges with opportunity are certainly in the cards here. I think, unfortunately, looking at another week of this, most of the precipitation you see here again will be in the early part of next week into Wednesday or possibly even Thursday. In the medium range forecast guidance, I mentioned the progressive pattern because it continues. This is the 6 to 10 day outlook for the 12th through the 16th. And you can see on the left-hand side here, our jet stream pattern, big trough over the middle of the country. But with that progressive pattern, it will be moving west to east, not staying in place too long. With that, you can see Michigan is sort of on the borderline between an area of cooler than normal weather to the west and warmer than normal to the east. Again, right about on the border. I think the take home, though, especially given where we are, is looking at the precip. And with this, an active storm track through the Midwest continues and probably will continue for much of the rest of the month. Because of that, we're looking at increased likelihood of wetter than normal conditions to continue. So again, more challenges in terms of getting out and starting field work, et cetera, here for the season. Similar conditions here for the 8 to 14 day time frame out to the 14th to the 20th. You can see an eastward translation of that feature, and it moves the cooler than normal weather into the middle of the Great Lakes. So right now, fairly good likelihood that the third week of the month is looking cooler than normal, and precipitation still normal to above normal with that pattern. But the moral of the story with this, that trough will continue on off to the east, and it'll be replaced once again. If we go beyond this, the odds are that we will see a return of milder than normal conditions here by late in the month. So the roller coaster ride continues with temperature, and it has to do with that jet stream pattern. And the 3 to 4 week outlook, this is actually each Friday, the Climate Prediction Center comes out with these 3 to 4 week outlooks, but this is consistent. If it looks familiar, it's because you've seen it a lot. And that's our long lead outlooks for the month of May. And really for the late spring and the early summer, they're almost identical to this in calling for near to above normal mean temperatures and above normal precipitation totals. That's definitely the direction we've been over the last, couple months, looking out long term, and it still is. And you can see again, it's there's some details or devils on the details with week to week, but after a cooler than normal third week again, odds are we go back to milder than normal by the end of the month, but still that above normal precip issue, which will become more and more of an issue. And I think with that, I'm going to wrap up here with summary. Again, cool, breezy, unsettled here for the next couple days, courtesy of that weather feature currently in the region, and not looking for heavy rain, but still enough to cause problems with possibly some accumulating snow up north. Improving conditions by late in the weekend, and then certainly significantly noticeably warmer next week, but return threat of rainfall once again, probably more significant rainfall early next week. And as you just saw here with our medium range forecast guidance, we're looking for a return of cooler than normal once again, then the following week, the third week, and then maybe ending the month on a little bit warmer than normal. And with that, I will wrap up here and bring our to next week is an invitation here for the 14th, a week from today. Our speaker will be Dr. Kim Cassida to talk with us about forages. And so don't miss that. That's a week from today. And with that, I will turn it back over here to Mike and/or Phil. Thanks.